While we are full of our own crap, our own ideas, our own moral values, our own purpose, our own sense of importance, our own concepts of what the world is all about, endless stuff that we've accumulated, probably through reading too many books and listening to too many people, in actual fact. Once we can start to get rid of that, then something quite miraculous can happen. The problem is that the clearing out can be fairly painful. Well, not fairly painful, it can be very painful. And some people may be even led to certain states of desperation. But anyway, I'm going to go through these things, as, well, not always, but very often. If you are looking for some positive reinforcement in your life, then do not listen to this. This is all about taking things out of your life to leave space for something else. So let's start. The universe has no purpose and our lives have no meaning. That is the first negation. It should be fairly obvious that the notion of purpose is a wholly man-made thing. It's a concept that we have in our minds, that we have created. And while in ordinary life, purpose may serve some kind of role, so we may have the purpose of getting a better job, which means possibly getting more qualifications or whatever. But the universe itself has no notion of purpose. How would it? It's a purely human construct. Same with meaning. That something has meaning is just a human idea. And in fact, when you look at it closely, you'll find that really it's just the ego trying to validate itself in some way. And there are no shortage of people who will cater to this need that we have for meaning. I think one of the most obnoxious books is, I think it's called God's Purpose for You. As though the universe, 4 trillion galaxies, 100 billion stars in each galaxy, dimensions that we're yet to discover, and so on and so forth, as though we should assume some kind of importance, just utter and total egoism. Anyway, the universe has no purpose. Personally, I find that so liberating I can't express it. If the universe had a purpose, it would mean that somehow it was tied into something. That it has no purpose means, in effect, it is totally free to manifest according to its own nature. And you see the picture of the galaxy. A galaxy is effectively a self-organizing mechanism. All that's required there is the law of gravity, and it organizes into this magnificent thing. And you may or may not know that a single cell in your body has more complexity and structure than even a whole galaxy. So the universe manifests necessarily, Spinoza is great on this. It manifests necessarily according to its own nature and has no purpose. It's just like a perpetual flowering of its own nature, which is the best way that I can explain it. And in terms of meaning, well, if you can get rid of any notions of meaning from your mind, which I admit is difficult to do, and if you can get rid of your notions of purpose, then you leave a space for something else, and we'll get on to the something else at the end. Okay, number 2. The universe does not come with a moral code. Should be sort of obvious, really. In fact, what would we mean by morals? Certainly things like the Bible and the Quran and Western religions mainly, and to some extent the Buddhist tradition talk about moral behavior, loving kindness and all that kind of thing. There are good reasons why those things might be useful, but the universe itself has no moral code. The universe just manifests as it manifests, and as I've said in other podcasts, the universe has laws by which it operates. You cannot walk through a wall. You cannot float upwards because gravity is pulling you downwards. But Stalin can murder 20 million people. The universe has no prohibition on that. So, if there is any moral code, it needs to be brought about just as a practical matter. Now, people do feel things like compassion and whatever, but I'm going to get onto that later. But in terms of a moral code, the universe does not have one. There's no big man in the sky saying what is right and what is wrong. All there is the universe manifesting its own nature, and we are such a tiny, tiny part of that nature. We're like a cell on your toenail that's about to drop off. Do you notice that? No. The universe doesn't really notice what's happening on this planet. It's just so small, so far away, so insignificant. It's less than a cell on your toenail. Number 3. Nothing is important because nothing is permanent. When I realized that, I just felt like a free man. People mourn at the thought of nothing being permanent, and indeed loved ones, when they pass away, cause significant pain. We just wish they could live forever. But in actual fact, the fact that nothing is permanent means that nothing is important. You need not worry about, be concerned about anything, because what's the worst that can happen to you? The worst is death. Well, it's going to happen anyway. And as someone, just an ordinary guy I know, once said to me, fear of death is the root of all fears, and in truth it is, because we can get on to Schopenhauer's will to life, which is this dominant force within us, and part of that, the mechanism for that, is fear of death. So nothing is important. Relax and float downstream. Number 4, the world of finite sentient beings is hostile. That was the hardest thing for me to come to terms with. I don't know why it was so hard. Maybe I believed in some kind of innate goodness. But once I had come to terms with that, it was like the whole thing opened up. And Spinoza, in his Ethics, particularly part 3, and the propositions that around about number 30 to 35 say, talks about the implications of the will to life. He calls it desire, but the will to life in people. What it means is they are always, or typically, not always, but typically, going to manifest their own self-interest above and beyond yours. Of course, in the world of animals, if we didn't live in nice, secure cities or areas where there are no wild animals, we would be lunch, probably tomorrow, for some wild animal that had a hungry belly. So the world of finite sentient beings is hostile. And I'm going to say something that actually, not Spinoza, but, Spinoza does imply it, but Schopenhauer. And I hesitate to say it because it's so, it's so extreme. But every other living sentient being is your adversary. I'm including people there. Once I understood that, I used to be so antisocial. I just couldn't bear to be with people because of all the phony stuff. But now I can just sit there and lap it up, because I can see what's going on. I understand it. You really need to understand Spinoza, part 3 particularly, to understand the nature of human behavior. Once you understand it, it loses its sting. And you can actually play with it, enjoy it. I remember on one occasion we were with a group of people who were posing at least to be particularly well off, to be rich, talking about their villas and their yachts and how many holidays they took and da 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 da. It was mutual bigging up. They were all trying to make themselves bigger than everybody else. And I was watching my wife, and she was a little bit annoyed by all of this. And then all of a sudden, she just said, "We're nearly broke." It's so funny. She's so brave to say that. They immediately quarantined us, put us outside the group. It isn't actually true that we're nearly broke, but it was just such a brilliant thing to say. And anyway, this is human interaction in the main. Of course, there are relationships that are more solid and more real than that. But even lovers, people who are married, unfortunately, between a third and a half will cheat on each other. In the most intimate relationship, but the will to life, the sex drive, is so strong, it will push people to cheat on the most intimate relationship they may ever have in their lives. So let's get to number 5. No desire. Easier said than done. But as I've pointed out in a previous podcast, the way to get to no desire is to look at the nature of the beast, of life. Because desires are a property of the will to life. They all originate from that, well, nearly all. And, the desire for more money, the desire for more sex, the desire for a bigger car, goes on, fame, power. It's all the desire or the will to life, manifesting in its various shades of grey. So if you can, through looking at the will to life and its nature and the misery and suffering it causes, and the absolute cruelty of it, this dumb instinct called the will to life, then you will find that many of your desires will diminish, because it will all seem so futile, meaningless. So, I've talked about the universe having no purpose, and our lives having no meaning, the universe not coming with a moral code, nothing is important because nothing is permanent, the world of finite sentient beings is hostile, and the diminishing and possible eradication of desires. They're all taking away. So what happens when you take all this stuff away? Well, what can happen is that something comes in to fill the vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum.